the inked portrait. "What kind of man must Milo Birch be for his head to be worth that much money?" "Who knows?" Benehime said with a bored shrug. "Humans have so many laws." "I'm gonna have a wanted poster someday," Eli said proudly. "And a bounty, the biggest there's ever been." "Nonsense, love," Benehime said, taking his hand. "Whatever would you do with such a thing? Besides," she kissed his cheek, "no one could ever want you more than I do. Now come, it's time to go home." "But we just got here," Eli cried, trying to tug his hand away. Before he'd finished his sentence, they were back in Benehime's white nothing. "Now," she said, sitting him on the little white bed she'd ordered the silkworms to spin just for him. "Wait here and don't move. I have to take care of something, but I won't be long." Eli glared. "Where are you going? And why can't I come with—" "Elatin." Benehime's voice was sharp, and Eli shut his mouth sulkily. She smiled and folded her hands over his. "I'll be back soon," she whispered, kissing his forehead. "Wait for me." Eli squirmed away, but the lady had already vanished, leaving him alone in the endless white. He sat down with a huff, picking at his pillow with his fingernails while he counted down the seconds in his mind. When he'd sat just long enough to be sure she was really gone, Eli reached out and tapped the air. At once, a thin white line appeared. It fell through the empty space, twisting sideways as it opened into a hole just wide enough for him to wiggle through. Grinning, Eli crawled forward and slipped through the veil after the shepherdess. She was easy to follow. Everywhere the shepherdess went, the world paid attention. All he had to do was follow the trail of bowing spirits. The first few times he'd tried this, she'd caught him easily, but Eli had quickly learned that if he was quiet, Benehime didn't always see him. And so, keeping himself very still and very silent, Eli slipped through the world until he saw the lady's light shining through the veil. He stopped a few feet away, lowering himself into the dim shadows of the real world before opening the veil just wide enough to peek through. What he saw on the other side confused him. When the lady had left so suddenly, he'd thought for sure she was going to deal with some spirit crisis, a flood maybe, or a volcano, something interesting. But peeking through the tiny hole in the world, he didn't see anything of the sort. Benehime was standing in a large, dirty study, her white feet resting on a pile of overturned books. In front of her, a thin old man sat on a single bed. The sheet was thrown back as though he'd gotten up in a hurry, but his eyes were calm as he faced the shepherdess, his rings burning like embers on his folded hands. Eli frowned. Why was Benehime visiting a spiritualist? She disliked the stuffy, meddling wizards even more than he did. Yet the man was almost certainly a spiritualist. No one else wore jewelry that gaudy, and the study they were standing in was clearly the upper level of a spiritualist's tower. It looked just like his father's, Eli thought, though Benaj would never let his room get so cluttered. He never allowed anything to fall short of his expectations, the old taskmaster. Eli glowered at that. But before he could fall into thinking about all the things his father had done wrong, the old spiritualist spoke. "You're her, aren't you?" he said, his voice full of wonder. "The greatest of the great spirits." "I am no spirit." Benehime's voice was so cold and cruel it took Eli several seconds to recognize it. She leaned over as she spoke, bending down until her eyes were level with the old man's. Her presence saturated the air, as cold and heavy as wet snow, but the man didn't even flinch. "Who told you?" "Doesn't matter now," the spiritualist said, waving his hand, his rings glittering with terror in the lady's harsh white light. "You're here, and I have questions." "Typical human arrogance," Benehime said, crossing her arms. "To think I would answer your questions." "If we all